live.
All right.
Hello, everyone.
Good afternoon. Are you sure that's live?
It's as live as we're going to get.
Just redo it.
It's not going to work.
All right. We missed the time.
How's everybody doing today? We are
doing
a little
great.
late, but better late than never.
A little bit of technical difficulties this time around today, but we made it. Apparently, I should have been setting up the StreamYard beforehand. Anyway, good afternoon. It is the final and delayed episode of our winter season on Lifestyle Business. And this is Lifestyle Business, and I'm Ann.
And I'm Chris.
And we are so excited to have you here today. We've got our friend, dear friend, really, Robert Fogarty, who is also the founder of Dear World. It is a creative solutions company that helps organizations build culture of authenticity, inclusivity, and purpose through the art of storytelling. And fun fact, when we launched Lifestyle Business last March, Robert was our very first guest.
It feels like an anniversary party.
It does feel like an anniversary party. And just another sort of fun story about Robert is we had him on Lifestyle Business because he had been here with us in Healdsburg about a month before. Robert has been through many of our special moments of opening up. When we first bought our house, he did some work on it. So he helped us strip wallpaper. He slept on the floor. He was there throughout the entire experience and has popped in many times over the course of the last couple of years for us. So Robert is a consistent character in our lives. But what he said to us when he came, and this was in March of 2020. It was right before my birthday. And he was like, my business is struggling because everybody has canceled all events, by the way, because of this impending pandemic. And we had no idea how.
That was like the first we heard of it.
Sure. I mean, it felt very fresh. People were still sort of thinking like, oh, it's a couple weeks. And Robert was like, actually, it seems like it's going to be a lot longer. Anyway, so it's going to be really fun to check in with him and see how life has changed for him in the last year. Mm-hmm. It certainly changed for us. And so we're excited to have him on. And in general, everyone should be excited to have the inspirational Robert Fogarty joining us. Okay. But before we get to that, or as Harper would say, ote. We have been talking about real estate all the time. It seems like every conversation comes up. There's another real estate discussion. Some people are like, the future looks bright. Others are like, no, it's going to stay the same. They're actually the ones who are living in that cave, I think. But we are seeing sort of firsthand some of the big changes and big swings that are happening. And so I thought I would pass it over to you, and you could maybe give us a few of your predictions for real estate in 2021 and beyond.
All right, this is like a David Letterman sort of top 10 list. How do you want to do this? Do you want me to do them, and then you'll offer your color commentary?
I mean, I think that's what everyone wants.
I'm sure you won't hesitate to weigh in. All right, here are the 5 predictions. Looking into our crystal ball here, guaranteed to happen for real estate in a post-COVID world. Okay, so number 1, the rise of the rural.
Woo!
So rise of the rural means that people who work in a city or have been working in a city have been not commuting through COVID, and they're not going to want to go back to commuting, which means they now have the opportunity to move from suburbia out to rural burbia. Is that a word?
Rural, or the city out to rural.
Or the city out to rural. And we've actually had a lot of friends in our lives that are moving out of.
We did it.
San Francisco. It's actually exactly what we did. So we haven't been commuting to San Francisco, but we can so easily get to San Francisco. We do. But I think especially for people who then will be going into cities, maybe once a week or twice a week. That's sort of what we're hearing commonly in the hybrid work world. In Robert's world, we'll see how he reacts to it, but people moving up to Park City and living up there instead of being in Salt Lake. People in New York moving up to the Hudson Valley instead of being in the city. So this is the rise of the rural.
And it is interesting because it's like, all of a sudden, if you put your head around it, you're like, I'm going to the city for my job once, maybe twice a week. I can add 30 minutes to my commute. And when you go towards rural, you were saying this the other day, most big cities have a pretty great rural environment about an hour and a half away from the city.
Yeah.
And so when you think about that, you're like, okay, I can add 30 minutes to my commute if I only do it once a week.
Right.
It's good drive time with Anne opportunity. But when you think about it, like I remember back in the day, it would be an hour and a half to eat both ways if you were going down to Google.
People aren't going to do that anymore.
And that's 3 hours out of your day. Now imagine you're like, well, why would I do that on the corridor? I'd be happy to spend 2 hours once a week or 2.5 hours once a week each way, and then have an amazing life and lifestyle outside of that. So you're right. Rise of the rural, which is great for rural communities, right? Because those have been some of the communities that we've seen get hollowed out. And so I think it's going to be very exciting, that idea of rise of the rural. All right, go ahead.
All right, number 2, global digital nomads. So we
not
were
just a trend. People on Instagram.
We were in Todos Santos for a month. Van life is real. So many Sprinter vans down there. But one of the things that we hear about when people talk about everybody in San Francisco is moving to Miami, or these types of trends, the competition for talent is not just a domestic competition. People are moving across the world, Mexico, Thailand, you name it. So the digital nomad network is truly a global network. So that's number 2.
And they are real. I thought it was funny when we were doing you do your real estate tour when you're on trips, and you heard like, oh, well, the real rise of the digital nomad. I was like, oh, that's like not just a thing people talk about. It's an actual segment of the population.
All right.
Cities are going to compete on culture and quality of life for talent, not companies. Huh. Tap, tap, New Orleans. Are you going to be on the top 10 list for this one?
This is interesting because it's the whole, elephant hunting, whale hunting, recruiting company headquarters. That game is over. It's about recruiting talent.
So 1995.
You to compete for talent, it's about having a great culture, a great quality of life. In this vein, I think the death of New York City and San Francisco and other great cities has been greatly exaggerated. People have been gone, but they're coming back. We were in San Francisco last week, and it was vibrant. It was exciting.
My gosh, amazing.
Because these are cultural hubs. These are awesome cities to live in. Again, not everybody has moved to Miami. Miami's pretty great too. So we're sort of picking on Miami here.
It's literally rocking.
Yeah.
And in fact, we're seeing, there's huge amounts of for rent signs. That's a reality. But we're also seeing people start to want to come back. I mean, why wouldn't you want to live in these vibrant centers when you're young? And I think we're seeing the, return of young folks to the city who are critical to making it vibrant and lively. Those of us who have children just stay home.
And on the flip side, cities that have always competed on, maybe they're a center of commerce, but not necessarily a center of culture. They're gonna struggle because the talent doesn't have to be there anymore. They're gonna
picking on Hartford, Connecticut, aren't you?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of cities that we've been to that are not that exciting, but they've had businesses and companies there.
Okay. 25% contraction in commercial real estate.
I thought you were going to let me go through this.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, everybody we talk to, everybody, literally everybody, except for Google, is reducing the size of their footprint and their office space. This is going to be a trend. Companies are going to go hybrid. They're going to save money on their leases. They're going to exit leases. Most companies won't go fully remote, but I predict a 25% contraction in commercial real estate.
Heard it here, folks.
That's a big contraction. That's a bloodbath in commercial real estate. There's going to be huge pricing pressure on rents, and this is going to lead to. You want me to? You're going to jump in, or you want me to do this?
Yeah, I can't wait to hear.
Flex space is going to become the norm in commercial real estate. So people want to consume with a product that we've been doing for years. Obviously, co-working space and flex space. Companies are, we're already seeing it. We talked about UNICEF a couple of weeks ago. Companies are, starting to adopt flex workspace. What does this mean for us? Is this good for us or not?
No, it is not good for operators, which is okay. I mean, operators just need to figure it out. Operators have, consistently in industries, you have middlemen create new product sets, and then eventually the more traditionals take those over. So we're going to see in this cycle probably a rationalization of flex space providers, and more landlords are just going to figure out how to actually do it, which means there's going to be a lot more flexible options, which is great for the consumer. And it also means sort of the death now to the middleman in the industry. I mean, that's just the way it's going to go. We're seeing it firsthand. We're hearing out of Nashville that the WeWork, which was like the fancy space down the street, they are offices for $500. You can't actually pay your rent if you're giving your offices away for $500. And they're able to do that because they've restructured their leases with the landlord probably, and they're supporting the landlord, and the landlord's fine, right? And so the building owner's fine. It's fine. It's actually a good thing for the consumer. We're going to see that happen, that there's going to be more flexibility in it. Frankly, the idea that the only option was to sign a 10-year lease and put your house on the line if you're a consumer of commercial real estate is total BS, and that's going away. And so it's time. It's time for the landlord to start to flex their space and realize, what it takes to actually care about your customer every day, and not just, the day you sign that 10-year lease.
Yep. All right. Those are our top five. Predictions for real estate.
Tune in for Real Estate Insights from Chris and Ann.
Revisit it.
Ariel, our producer's going to be like, never do that again.
We'll revisit that a year from now and see what comes to fruition.
All right. We've done our crystal ball. And now, when Robert Fogarty founded Dear World in 2010, his intention was clear. Create a way for people to share their love of New Orleans through personal stories. It didn't take long for the likes of Deepak Chopra, Coach K from Duke, Stuart Scott of ESPN, and countless other CEOs and company leaders become inspired by these personal testimonials about place and time. Today, much to Robert's delight, what started as a love letter to New Orleans has grown into an international series dedicated to connecting organizations, communities, and teams through meaningful stories of their people. Today, Robert teaches us how to embrace our authentic stories as a way to find purpose and thrive in our lives and culture.
All right, let's
bring him on. Hey,
in.
buddy.
Howdy.
Where are you today?
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we sure can.
Real quick, first of all, whoever wrote that, thank you. That was really, really special and sweet. But Ann, New Orleans?
I heard that too. I was like, oh, come on.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm just going on down to New Orleans for my bachelor party.
God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
It's all good. I mean, I moved to New Orleans, calling it New Orleans, but
I mean, I don't call it New Orleans very often. That's
maybe
very
only
Canadian.
when you're reading.
I was
don't
reading
know.
it. Oh God, sorry.
It might- you might-
I try to
did
pretend
it
like
even
it's falling
concur?
off my tongue. Should I do it again? Oh,
it kind of threw me for a loop because you've spent so much time in New Orleans. I was like, what? Man.
I heard the exact same thing. It was like fingernails on a chalkboard to
wow.
me.
Okay. You know, I'm not always perfect. It's good for people to understand that some of us have failing points just once in a while.
We're gonna have to put Ariel, our producer, needs to put like pronunciation guide around New Orleans.
I'm pretty sure I won't make that mistake again.
And
Anyway.
I did not mean to shame you about your pronunciation. We're all different learners, so it must have been you were reading. Like, I'm learning a lot about how people learn and communicate, and you were reading it, and your brain must be just the way you communicate when you're reading something versus like in conversation. You would never say New Orleans, correct?
I think that is absolutely right. I think it is safe to say that it was an appropriate shaming moment, Robert.
That's just fun.
That's totally the right. It was the right.
Just a minor amount. It was hopefully it felt more of like a healthy check on your love of New Orleans.
Yeah, I love it. Anyway.
Speaking of which, I love that hat.
Look, we always got a rep.
Yeah.
Always got a rep.
All right.
All right. So a year ago, first guest on Lifestyle Business, we had just seen you. The doors of travel were closing. The doors of in-person events were closing or closed. You were on the road. You told me this week 200 nights last year, right?
Well, the year
before
the world
before
turned.
COVID. You're leading up to COVID.
I was here for first time in a decade. 300. I slept in the same bed for the first time in a decade for most of the year. I mean, it was, and I found myself being like, is this what normal people do? like the idea of routine. I was always like, I'm the absence of routine. It was actually really interesting for me personally to feel like what a routine feels like, even though I definitely had some existential dread where it felt like Groundhog's Day a little bit, where I was like, is this what people do? They eat the same breakfast and they travel the same thing. So yeah, it was that's been this year. And yeah, I was a 200 nights a year person pre-COVID, not in my own bed.
Well, let's talk about some of those changes.
I once was 200 nights a year.
Tough.
Traveling, maybe not for work always.
Really? Were you a big just a big traveler?
Yeah, no, I was always traveling for work too.
I don't know if I was telling Chris this. We caught up a little bit in a pre-chat of the thing you're talking about of culture and the future of work. I don't know. It's going to take a lot to get me back on planes at that level.
Yeah.
I don't think it's happening. No one, I think for the first time we get the opportunity. We've all been on a hamster wheel, right? Where you're like, oh, pop in, pop out, do this, do that. And now all of a sudden, I think you have to be thoughtful about the time, right? I mean, there's a lot of wasted time in airports.
There's the opportunity costs, I think, of in my old business, which who knows if it's going to come back. I think it's a really interesting conversation that we're all having of like, will it come back? Yes, to some extent, but brands would spend, you're sending the spend on bringing 400 of your salespeople together for 3 days in a place with travel days, with like the opportunity costs are ones now in which we've been forced into this new reality where it's been long enough where the long tail of like social normalization, I could see a lot of event managers being like, wait, we used to spend $6 million on hotel rooms and flights and we, for 500, maybe we bring 50 and the other 450 are like log in to a hybrid version of the event. I could see that being
although I think the convening of people from a team perspective is going to be even more important. You might spend more on those in-person events, even though you have an opportunity cost. I think the travel that's going to change is the road warrior sales travel.
Interesting.
Right? Where you've got people are going to be like the road warriors who would leave on Monday. They'd be doing 3 cities in a week. They're staying in hotels. They're eating on the company dime. They're doing it in the context of calling on an account, right? Selling the account, maintaining the account. I think those opportunities are going to shift because all of a sudden people are realizing, they're like, do I really want to sit in person for 2 hours with a salesperson talking to me and having a chat and selling me? Or can we just do that on Zoom so I don't have to go into the office? I think we're going to see a total paradigm shift in sales culture. But people are still going to want to come together. I'm more bullish on your business than mine.
Wow.
I might take the other side of the coin.
I like it. Let's see.
Because I'm actually, this is like the New Orleans like friction here. I almost think that the salespeople who are willing to get on planes are going to win over the Zoom, and that the head counts of like who is worth the squeeze on my 400 person team, because there's a massive innovation now in the socializing of virtual and hybrid events. They're not great, but they get the job done. So when you're talking about a head count of like, hey, it's $100 a head to have them log in from their home. And you know what, salesperson 101 to 400, we used to spend 6,000 a head to fly them out.
Yeah.
I think there might be this consolidation of, frankly, in a weird way, like the high-end events, the C-suite events, the high producer events, the price per head is going to go up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then there's going to be this, and mark my words, there's going to be this weird kind of like game of which 2 or 3 years from now, it's going to come back where people are like, wait, I want to be like, then you're going to start to have bad culture again of like, almost like a caste system of like, within cultures of who gets to actually go to the event. And then it's going to be this weird VIP versus general admin thing. That would be because it's going to be hard for event budget people. They're going to want to save that money. They're going to want, they have not been putting people up in hotels and flights and foods and meal. It's a lot easier to throw a 100-person conference than a 1,000-person conference.
Yep.
I'm specifically talking about the internal game, right? Not the South by Southwest, it's like the leadership or internal sales meeting kind of things.
Yeah.
But I could be totally wrong.
But I think that's the same dynamic. I mean, that's the same dynamic we're describing. If you're a company, and most companies are not Google, right? Most companies are not Facebook. Most companies are not money presses, right? They actually have margins that matter. You're looking at your event costs the same way you're looking at your commercial real estate right now. My big office tower in downtown New York City, right? I'm in the retail industry, or I'm in some industry with slim margins. I'm like, hey, I can cut my leasing costs in half and pretty much be just as good. I'll let people work at home. They'll like it. I think those dynamics, you're right. Those are going to provide a lot of pressure that it's going to be hard to go back to the old way.
We shall see. I think your ruralopolis is the thing that is, what do you call it? Reverbia? Rural?
Rise of the rural.
The rise of the rural is indeed, I think, a thing in the knowledge economy.
I mean, I'm seeing that. We're seeing that play. I think that's one of the coolest things, right? We're seeing that play out, which is the rise of lifestyle cities. But even just like here, we just had friends who we found out they're selling their place in San Francisco and they're moving to Petaluma. You know, it's like an extra 30-minute on their commute. They only have to go one day a week. Why are we living in the city?
Yeah, I was talking to a chief people officer the other day. She said something that I think is going to be industry parlance, and it might already be in the Bay. She's a CPO of a tech firm, and 3 is the new 5, is what she said.
There you
and
go.
Just like 3 is the new 5. Like, we're not going to get people back in the office 5 days a week anymore. Like 3 is the max. I think we're going to end up at like this kind of, you know, even when the offices open up again, people are going to be coming to expect kind of maybe like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but being able to have the Monday, Friday flexing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the reality is that we've been asking for that. I mean, Google, we were just talking to a Googler recently, and they're saying the same thing. And they were always very against work from home culture. That was never a thing. And it was almost frowned upon if you wanted to have like any flex schedule, which, you know, you have to embrace it now. And I think a lot of times that lack of control for CEOs has been something they've held on to. And it's in a way a little bit of like, it always was a little bit sexist, right? Because who was the person who actually needed a flexible work schedule? The mom coming back to work, right? You're coming back after maternity leave and you still want to do 5 days in 4. And it was always something that was like not possible or held you back from your advancement and your career advancement. And meanwhile, like if you think about it, moms have no time for drama, no time for politics, bust their ass when they're in the office or when they have the time to do it. And it was just a control factor. And so now it's like, finally, we're seeing that eliminate, and flexible schedules, we know they work.
Yeah.
We know they work.
All right. So let's talk about our businesses and, you know, innovations that we've hit on over the last year. You know, obviously, you know, we started this lifestyle business podcast, you know,
I like that I'm a repeat guest. Am I the?
Yeah, during the pandemic, you were our first guest. We've had to do everything virtually. All our programming, everything has moved online. You know, we will come back to in-person programming, and we're eager to. We're not doing it yet. We're waiting for when it's safe and whatnot. What about you? What about you? You've made some moves into the virtual space. Tell us about those, and then tell us about where you see sort of the virtual versus physical, you know, in person going long term.
Yeah, we're all like, if you saw, I have, you know, Benjamin on my team. We got this massive like virtual setup, 4 cameras, Studio A, Studio B. So we hacked into the virtual keynote business. Kept the lights on. It was not anything. I mean, I wasn't doing anything other than surviving last year, and I think that's important. I think we all had to kind of take a look at what was next. And I think when I was on this show last year at this time, I was definitely probably in fight, survive like mode, you know, just fist up. And now, you know, after a year, I joke it was the hardest $500 I ever made. Revenues were down 40%, 50% from the year before. I had a couple clients that just rode with us, which was really beautiful. That like some clients were like, nah, we're done, we're out. I had a couple clients, probably 8 clients who went to virtual and just kind of, we rode that wave together. Let's figure this out. And talk about people who, when I talk to them now of where I'm at, I thank them for this, like the gift they gave me of just riding with me. Like, and there was only about 8 or 9 of them. And those 8 or 9, they're getting Christmas cards and cookies or whatever, like for because they gave us this opportunity, Chris and Ann. You know, dear world, very, very quickly, as y'all know, has been a decade kind of art project that has been, the business was, I was able to hack into the keynote speaking industry where even though I had no name ID, we replaced the book signing, the traditional, someone gets up and tells you about their story and then you go have her sign her book or him sign her book. And that's a lucrative industry. And I hacked into that where we replaced the book signing with a portrait shoot. So our whole speech was around this idea of I've heard these incredible stories, I've photographed these incredible people, but now I want to photograph you. And guess what? We're going to do that right afterwards. And so we hacked into that business, and it was a great business for 10 years. And of course, it was built on human gathering. But by the end of that, and I'm a journalism major, profiles have always been my thing. For the last 4 years, the keynote speech was no longer a keynote in a traditional sense where someone comes up and talks about how great they are or what they learned on their hike up the Himalayas or, look, I'm not knocking any of those people, but
Chris is going to go rewrite his speech right now.
It is that it's a pretty general path of a keynote from a famous person, which is, let me tell you my story and how great it is. Obstacles, resolutions. My speech almost never talked about and probably people were like, why is this guy even on stage? Because we were always, and by the end, I built it into a facilitation around a method called what we've now called a brain tattoo storytelling method. And we would take our 90-minute keynote slot or 60-minute keynote slot, and it would be from the get about the people in the room and riding with their stories, where they would be equipped by the end of my talk with what they would write on their skin and the story that they would share. And then we do the photo shoot. So long story short, that I call it a magic trick, when I mean truly it is magical, but there's a set of conditions that if present, the trick works. And now we're getting into the learning and development business where we're teaching other people to run the magic trick, which is the brain tattoo method. And I guess I'm a learning and development entrepreneur now, Chris and Ann. Accenture is our first client, and they bought 100 licenses. And we just graduated our first cohort of certified Dear World storytellers over at Accenture. We're also working very closely with the chief people officer of Verizon. And they are our second client. And it's all built on this idea of that this thing, if the conditions are present, the brain tattoo method works. And all we need is someone who is a great listener, is a great communicator, and can facilitate group experiences around meaningful stories.
That's awesome. And the thing that I think is so remarkable about it, and probably a big part of your success, is exactly where you started. Most people get up on stage at these keynotes are sort of inspirational, and they're telling their story. You've always made this about the people that you're taking portraits about. It's about you. It's about and whether it's Stuart Scott or whether it's somebody working for Accenture, it's just as valid, and their story is just as personal. And it's interesting that that you've been able to build the brand this way.
It's been awesome. And also, let's be honest, I love the love. I love but I get to ride the glow. I get to ride the honeymoon feeling of so it's not that I don't love being able to share my story and my journey, but it's really in a very strategically placed where I need to get out of that quickly and into them as fast as possible. When a general traditional keynote is from minute 1 to minute 60 is kind of usually follows an arc of that person's story. And by the way, there is still a market for that. And there's amazing people. I just don't think I would be ever very good at it. And so kind of from the get, that's how I always try to hack in.
I love it. Hacking your way into anything.
Isn't that the name of the game? I mean, by the way, you're going to love this, Ann. I went back with my account. I've had to do a lot of financial modeling, new modeling of and I'm doing a cull of who's paid Dear World over the last 10 years. And you want to know who's like in the first 5 checks? TribeCon LLC.
Yes.
Or
yes.
TribeCon or something, like whatever the TribeCon.
Magic bucket.
First
Yeah.
believer.
First believer.
believer.
You're in the first 5 checks for sure.
All right.
In that historical ledger of who's paid.
I don't know.
Paid me money.
These days, we're huge believers into being the first 5 checks.
You were firmly in the first 5 checks, which, you know,
that is
really,
definitely Chris's mantra. Is the best way you can support is to be a customer.
Well, thank you, Chris. If I haven't said it on the record, thank you for writing that check.
You're welcome, and thank you. It is. We take a lot of joy in that. I take a lot of joy in being a first believer, being early, and I guess voting with your dollars, right? That was we have a similar story with your partner Benjamin, and it's been fun to be a part of both of your journeys.
Thank you. Where y'all want to go next?
Where do we want to go next?
Good question. We want to have you come back to see us.
I'm ready.
So I think you started with something which was, last year, definitely, I think there was a lot. Everyone was in a lot of the fight mode, right? And sort of like looking down the barrel. I think it's great just to sort of share how much, I know you had to work really hard this year, but did you find that when you sort of stepped back from the fight, did things start to flow a little better? I think that's some of the experience that we've been hearing is like, we're sort of holding on, white knuckling it. We don't know, everyone's canceled. And then all of a sudden you start to see the world shape. And I know you've done some pretty amazing work over the last year. I know there's a lot of work on that, but there was also probably a little bit of letting go.
Huh. You named it. I'll tell you, I had a moment of, and Benjamin jokes with me of like, hey, we've been collaborating for 10 years. And so the version of me, we were like, let's not make you the Reno lounge singer. But there was a version of there's a version of me that I'm like 60 and still just like playing the same song that, when I was 30 was like in Madison Square Garden, but like when I'm 60, it's like, in a smoky casino in Reno, but I'm still playing the same song. And there was some moments in 2020 where I was like, God, being a Reno lounge singer doesn't sound so bad right now. What does that mean practically? It means like letting go of my staff, taking money off the table, like just curling up and being like, let me ride this out. So I would be lying if I didn't have more than one moment probably in, we didn't make any money in April, May, June, July, or August. The first kind of deliverable or check came in September. Of course, we were working on some of those clients who I mentioned who stayed with us, had events later in the year, but the ones that were like in March, April, it was like out, right? So I think over the summer was like, how do I hold, and I don't have investors. I own 100% of the business. And, we have fixed cost. That was like the Reno lounge singer version of me. It was like, man, maybe I just need to just ride this out. And then, just kept looking with clear hearts and, sober minds with Ben of like, we believed in the version of Dear World that it could be something bigger than just the speaking and photo shoot business. And if there was any time to figure out if there was a there, it was when you're forced, that hand was forced upon us. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. It does. I feel like what we see is, and we're seeing it in our own business, right? Which is the world is shifting. And you can feel that everywhere. And if you're just trying to hold on to what it used to look like, you're not going to be able to to ride the massive bumps along the way to get to where you actually want to go. And I think it is an interesting time of change. And so often just letting that kind of evolve is very hard, especially when you're a control person, right? Or someone who's a driver. You feel like you need to be constantly driving. And I think we had that moment last year where we were like, what are we driving for, right? Like, why are we grinding so hard? Maybe we just need to like let up a little bit and see where the world goes. And then as you let go of the reins, you're all of a sudden you realize that you can kind of maneuver and move a little bit faster and be more responsive when you stop trying to.
I definitely had that moment. I remember probably 4 or 5 months in, certainly a letting go of the life I used to have, which was I would say without a shadow of a doubt that like, okay, that may or may not come back, but as far as it is for how I need to operate day to day, it's gone. And like quit holding on to like that it's going to come back. Which was really an important, I think, mindset for me and my own mental health. You know, I'm outspoken about mental health and depression and anxiety and how we need to how we perceive our life is like really important day to day of like, we're living our life day to day. Our perception of what it is really important. And I think I just had to believe it myself. And it took a few months of just like, wait, is it coming back or is it not coming back? And I remember being like, just let it go and like move forward. And that was, I think, important now to really helped align my team of we're going all in on this thing of like the magic trick is teachable, y'all. Because in, you know, the Leo version of me, and I've had a lot of people, you know, I love when people are like, oh, Robert, you're so great at this. Like, no, but we want you. Like, that feels really good to my like self-conscious, massively insecure self. When people are like, oh, it's you that we want.
None of us have that. None of us.
Right?
No.
And that was.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Here's what's fascinating for y'all, and you've known me for a long time. We could have built a certified storyteller far before the pandemic. It was just easier for me at the top to be like, yo, I'll just fly me out. Like, and to be truly forced to be like, this is either going away or you're going to curl up and be the Reno lounge singer and hope that it comes back, or you're going to just truly believe it isn't. I'm not that special. The thing is special. And I feel special that I was able to kind of birth that thing. But to kind of take me out of the equation of like the specialness. I used to say that all the time. I think I used to say all the right words like, oh, it's not that special. It's not that, but like when the checks kept coming in of like, but let's give you the microphone. It was just easier to just be like, okay, cool. This was truly that like, no, it's not special. I am a very good facilitator of the Dear World Brain Tattoo experience. But I now have Keshia and Fresh and guys like James Hamilton, who's now at Vice. Like, and now we have 100 Accenture people who are going to be very good at it. And that's really cool. And then we're going to have 20 at Verizon. And then we're going to have hopefully thousands of people who can deliver the Dear World method in a way that feels real, authentic, honest, and transformational for the teams that get to go through it.
That's awesome.
Well, just one way to say that is you can't take away that you did create the approach and the philosophy around that. And part of when you create something that turns into over 10 years, I mean, it's not like you popped up and you were like, here we go, we write things on our arms and then everyone feels really good and they walk away with a special story that connects them to other people, right? At the end of the day, that was an evolution of a very cool idea And it kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper over time. And so the idea and the concept and the approach is very unique and special. And now what I'm hearing from you is, as you evolve as a leader, you realize that that idea is more powerful than one individual. And so your creation of the idea is one piece of it, but disseminating and distributing that idea to the world is a much bigger purpose than the actual delivery of the keynote speech by Robert, right? And that is much more powerful. And it's that freedom that you're giving yourself to say, I don't have to be the messiah of this concept. I can actually have far more greater impact in the world with this idea, make more connections, build more resilience, support people's storytelling capabilities by getting the world to be able to facilitate this. And I think like that is the higher power. And you can say that, which is now you are shifting into the godlike territory of making everyone your disciple, Robert.
Yeah.
Or the first part.
Oh man, it's been cool. And I was telling Chris this, it took we photographed 150,000 people in 10 years, conservatively. 150,000 people between two contracts are going to go through Dear World this year. And sure, does it look slightly different where there won't be this beautiful glossy photograph, but the experience in the last 3 years, in my opinion, of bringing groups of people together, led by someone who's adept at this method, is the most powerful part is going through the method, and then the photograph is just an artifact of the experience, which is really cool. So I don't know. It's fun.
We did your virtual experience test.
Look at this, first believers.
We tried it out. And I will say it was one of those things where like it didn't have the photograph, right? It didn't have that sort of like beautiful thing that you get to point to and feel great about. But it did have the centering piece, right? It did sort of give you, it grew your heart a little bit. Which is, I think, a good way to come out of an event like that.
Well, we've evolved that. You were so early, we didn't have it. Now we have people put it on their hand and then grab their smartphone, and then once upon a time, and then they upload it into our next innovation is we're building a web enterprise platform for our clients that we jokingly call an intranet with a soul, which is people after the experiences upload their stories. And then, so we've been hired to.
We did have to write them on our hands.
Yeah. And so that's cool is we're now also helping curate the stories kind of as an internal comms team, which is cool. And so for our clients who buy the intranet with a soul, which is pretty fun.
All right. Well, we are at time with our friend Robert, and it's a bummer to say goodbye, but it is just for a short moment. I can't wait to see you again in real life. Hopefully, will you come and visit us in California?
Absolutely.
The baby needs.
What's up with Harper?
Oh, it's so fun. She's very fun right now.
Love it.
Yeah, it's been
all right.
great.
Well, let's let Robert go before we do the.
That's a great plan.
So Robert doesn't have to hear all of it.
Bye, Robert.
We're
Thank
gonna let
you so
you.
much. That was so great to hear from Robert.
Love you.
We love you very much, and excited to see what Dear World does in the future. And now let's get to a little bit of member magic.
All right.
You want to hit it up?
Yep. All right. So over to Newark with our big week for Dee Marshall, CEO.
Big week, like billboard week.
Diverse and Engaged, a diversity consultancy that focused on financial services. She was quoted in a recent Financial Times article commenting on the issues of diversity in the financial services industry. Also, if you've been in Times Square recently, I saw the selfies she had. You may have seen Dee featured in a Sephora Women's History campaign.
How cool is
Go
that?
Dee.
Dee is just, man, she's a badass. Anyway, Yendor. If you haven't heard, Newark Symphony Hall announced Yendor Theater Company as its first company in residence. The first production was recently announced and will be directed by Richard Lawson, Beyonce's stepfather, and will live stream online this summer.
That's awesome. And if you're in our Newark location, you'll know that the new mural in that location was done by Yendor. So it's awesome.
And MindRight. Ashley Edwards, founder of MindRight, was recently honored as one of the best women in the New Jersey business world by ROI New Jersey.
I love it. Best women in the New Jersey business world. That's a big honor.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
We have the best women in New Jersey at Launchpad.
We literally do.
We
literally do.
Last week, Launchpad company Phone.com announced it was achieved record growth, topping 40,000 customers for the first time ever, following a 12-month surge of customers that came on as a result of the pandemic.
GoPhone.com.
Go pandemic for some of our businesses. And in Stockton.
Main Street Launch, along with the city of San Francisco and other local foundations, recently received some press for their efforts to provide $1.5 million in interest-free loans to San Francisco's small Black-owned businesses. Each business can get up to $50,000 to help pay for anything from rent to creating an online presence that could prove helpful during the pandemic. So amazing. Lots of good action from Launchpad
members having a huge impact on their community.
Yeah.
And a quick programming note, we'll be going on a short hiatus.
End of our winter season.
Break.
Yeah.
For the month of April, and we'll be back starting in May. We also want to take the time to thank our audience. We couldn't be here without you.
Yeah.
Each week we create a slate of programming that we think will be interesting and useful to Launchpad Nation. And we hope you're finding it helpful, entertaining, and engaging.
And as always, if you want to catch up on our past episodes, you can subscribe to us. Click the little bell here on LPTV programming channel, or subscribe to the podcast Lifestyle Business, wherever you get your podcast from.
All right.
Well,
and a huge thank you to Ariel, our producer. Makes us look good and sound good every week.
And we will be back in May. So long, folks.